Previously, we saw Matthew and Diana leave London and embark on a long journey, first to Matthew's father, Philip, and then to Bohemia for the Book of Life. But this is no ordinary trip for the couple. To survive the upcoming hardships, they have to act like one body and one soul. But is it even possible when Matthew is refusing to open up to his girlfriend and Diana is struggling to find her inner magic? Will fate rip them apart, or will they succeed in this hardship as well? When Diana and Matthew reach the French shore, they find that Philip has sent armed men to welcome the new couple. Diana is confused seeing them, and Matthew explains that it is a power tactic so that they do not change their minds and go back. Gallowglass, who accompanied them till now, bid them farewell to continue his journey to Bohemia. Matthew is sending him beforehand so that he can go and make preparations for their arrival later on. Diana and Gallowglass have developed a good bond, so they hug, and he advises Diana to be careful about Matthew because Philip tends to bring out the worst in Matthew. Back in England, Kit goes out and sees a man and a woman groping and aggressively making out with each other. He tells them to maintain discipline since they are on the street, but the woman looks at him. They both share a look of familiarity, and the woman smirks at Kit. The sensational woman is Louisa de Clermont, Matthew's sister and Kit's special friend. She tells him that she was bored in Venice, so she decided to take a trip to his brother. But Kit informs that Matthew is not at home, and this time he has company. Kit explains everything about Diana and says that Matthew is in love with her. Louisa tells him that Diana must have bewitched her, but Kit sadly says that he is in love. She then mentions that Matthew has yet again rejected his love and mocks him, but promises him that she will take care of her with a mysterious glint in her eyes. Not going to lie, Louisa does not seem like the most level-headed person. While Diana was enthusiastic about the journey, she is severely regretting her decision now. She finds her dress very uncomfortable and the days-long travel exhausting. But despite all this, she is excited to meet Issa. Matthew tells her that she won't be at Sept since she spends her time conducting witch trials. Diana is somewhat shocked to see that the past of one of her favorite people is not too beautiful. She then realizes that Matthew is no different. His past is also filled with skulls that he regrets, but any remorse cannot erase the history whatsoever. The next day, Diana wakes up, and Matthew says that they cannot travel since it is pouring outside. But he abruptly leaves and says that he will ask one of the men to make breakfast for Diana because she is a warm blood, and they need basic necessities. Diana and us too is offended by this unwanted remark and sudden coldness towards her. Later as they continue, Diana succumbs to exhaustion and falls off her horse. Matthew quickly goes and grabs her, and for the rest of the day, he carries her on his horse. But Matthew seems detached from her. Later, in their tent, Diana gets a little too hot and starts working her way down on Matthew. He seems to be enjoying it too, but as if he remembered something, he lifts her up and rolls out of the tent, saying that now is not a good time. Now Diana shows her frustration and anger towards the rejection, but Matthew does not seem to care. It looks like Matthew is showing a new side of himself that even Diana does not know how to tackle. The next day they reach the Sept, and Diana is worried about Matthew. Despite their little tussle in the tent, Diana is nervous about Matthew's reaction towards seeing Philip again, and Matthew worries about Diana and her reaction upon meeting Philip. When they enter the familiar Sept, Philip calls them straight to his study, where he is waiting for them. He is the opposite of what Diana had in mind. She only heard stories about him when he was captured by the Nazis before his death, but now he was much more aware and normal, and it was best not to underestimate him. Unlike before, this time, Matthew is completely silent when his love for Diana is tested. Diana, too, notices this and defends herself by saying that she is a powerful weaver and a time spinner. Philip is shocked by the time spinner's revelation, but he is not at all impressed by her, and this stings Diana. Philip then takes advantage of her weak moment and pokes that she is not that important to Matthew because if she was, Matthew would have consummated their relationship. Ouch. Diana is extremely embarrassed by this and the lack of Matthew's defense towards her, so after Philip dismisses them, she hurriedly leaves. Matthew understands the gravity of the situation very well, yet he still is unable to console the love of her life when she is insulted in such a brutal way. He follows her to her separate room and tries to explain that he does love her, but his past is too complicated. Diana argues back that Philip does not think that the past must come between true love. But Matthew touches a new low and shouts back that maybe Diana should sleep with Philip then. And luckily, Diana is equally pissed at him because she slaps him hard and pushes him out of her room in anger. Matthew then goes to his father to take out his anger, but Philip is too level-headed for him. He points out that Matthew is still hiding the truth from Diana by not telling her about his blood rage. Apparently, Matthew is also a carrier, and thus his acting out of his usual smooth demeanor is because of his blood rage. Matthew feels guilty, but before he can go deep in guilt, Philip says that he should go on a hunt the next day to feel free and eliminate his anger. True to his words, Matthew leaves for the hunt the next day, leaving Diana alone with the unpredictable Philip. He sends a servant to dress Diana and then gives her the keys to the house. He claims that he is giving her the honor of being a woman in his house, but Diana answers him by saying that she will not accept the keys just because she is a woman. But to deflate the situation, she asks if she can visit the study, to which Philip happily obliges. He leaves Diana on her own and goes to greet his guest, who is another witch. Andre Champier came to Sept-Tours at Philip's request to check on Diana. They both go to the library where Diana is, and after hearing them coming toward her, she wears the ring Issa gave her in the future. She greets the fellow witch with respect, but Champier soon closes all boundaries and grips Diana's head to check her memories and learn about her secrets. Diana uses all her magic to resist him, but he is powerful enough to learn about Diana feeding Matthew to save his life. Philip is looking at the commotion with a very focused expression as if he wants to see something in Diana. Meanwhile, the poor girl is in pain because someone is trying to get in her head. She screams in agony, and hearing her voice, Matthew, who just returned from his luxury trip, comes running. When she sees him, she uses her magic to draw his dagger and stabs the witch right in his stomach. His limp body falls on her, but she pushes him away and stands in front of the de Clermonts in anger and determination. If Philip thinks that he can break Diana this easily, he is so wrong. Previously, we saw that Diana suffered from several heartbreaks, given to her by none other than her boyfriend and fake husband. Apparently, he is a blood-raged vampire who refuses to tell Diana about his centuries-long disease for whatever reasons. But not only this, she found out that Matthew de Clermont, the ever-composed and persuasive, is not that courageous in front of his father. What will Diana's reaction be when she confronts Matthew about his deception? Will she give him another chance, or will she part ways with him for good? As Diana pushes the dead witch's body over, Matthew starts to argue with his father, Philip, over the breach of safety on his part. But Philip, being him, says that he wanted to test Diana and her powers and to figure out if she is worthy of his son. Diana takes offense to that, but given that she just took someone's life, she does not let it show. However, Philip sees Issa's ring on Diana's finger and figures out that in the future, his wife has already approved of her. But, just as he starts to accept Diana as a de Clermont, he realizes that Issa promised never to part from the ring as long as he was alive. This hits him like a brick because death and a vampire are two things that we rarely see. Diana leaves the father-son duo to deal with their future issues and goes on a boat ride to clear her mind. After a while, Matthew comes by the lake and calls her to have a talk. Diana angrily agrees because, let's face it, she is too in love to lose Matthew. He tries to make her talk about the murder she just committed, but Diana says that she is having too many violent thoughts, and she is scared because she does not regret taking his life. Matthew is not shocked by this confession, but he is worried about her mental being. On the other hand, Philip is stunned by his death. He sits down to write his wife a letter, but words leave his pen, and he sits there absent-mindedly. Meanwhile, in the future, Sarah and Em say that they feel a weird feeling in Philip's library, and Issa tells them it was Philip's favorite place for hiding notes. However, upon rigorous research, they still do not find anything and feel disappointed. Later, to clear his mind, Philip urges Matthew to have a fight with him, but his intentions are not so pure. He knows that Matthew still has not shown his true self to Diana and wants her to see who he really is. And his plan is successful because in between the fight, Matthew's blood rage reappears, making him act like a manic animal. And Diana sees all of this. Matthew is ashamed of her seeing him so out of control, but she is too in love to care. Matthew reveals that his disease is the reason he cannot mate because if he will, there is a possibility that his disease will get out of control. Diana is sympathetic to him but asks where and why it all started. Matthew says that in the past, Philip used his disease to eliminate any enemies, and this in turn made him guilty and ashamed of his actions. This enraged Diana, who goes on to fight on Matthew's behalf. But Philip reveals that he was trying to make their bond stronger by opening raw and unfiltered versions of them. Diana is annoyed by the tests and says she is worthy of her son's love, and at that moment, she starts glowing, making Philip gasp in awe. He recalls an ancient prophecy, in which a power will bring an end to the old world, so that a new one will arise, and Philip believes that Diana is that power. Diana is proud of herself for standing up for her love and smiles a little at the small victory. Later, Matthew and Diana are outside talking out their misunderstandings when Philip emerges and makes Diana his blood daughter. This makes her an official de Clermont since she is now his daughter as well. A while later, Diana asks Matthew about how Philip died, and there it is revealed that poor Philip was tortured by the Nazis in the Second World War. He was broken to such an extent that Matthew had to bestow mercy on him by taking his life. Diana understands why Matthew is so guilty in this timeline, and why he still cannot look Philip in the eyes. To clear his mind, Philip takes Diana and Matthew to the ruined temple beside Sept-Tours. He tells them both that it was dedicated to the goddess of the hunt, who is also named Diana. Philip does a ritual there and asks the goddess for protection upon Diana. As the ritual is completed, a white stag appears, and Philip says that the message is sent to the goddess. There, while emotions are still high, Matthew makes a quick proposal to Diana, who understandably accepts it. They both go back to Sept-Tours and Philip makes preparations for the wedding. He gifts Matthew a brooch which he kept for good luck and says that he is passing its charm to the groom now. Diana wears a beautiful blue 16th century gown that makes her eyes stand out. Matthew is awestruck seeing her on the end of the altar, and his Adam's apple bobbles up and down. They both say their vows and keep eye contact as if they were making promises to each other. Later, the newly wedded couple goes to their room, where Matthew luckily lets go of his past and just spends the night with the love of his life. Meanwhile, Philip finally makes peace with his fate and writes a letter to his wife in the future and hides it on the cover of a book. Anissa finds it in the future and cries after reading the last letter from her husband. Talk about the circle of life.